back to the show. This is The Law Show on CL 650.
And welcome back to The Law Show on CL 650. We're talking about wills and estates from McQuarrie LLP. Alyssa Lockhart is with us in studio along with Leah Donaldson. And probate, what does that mean for the layperson out there? Explain what probate is and when that starts and ends.
Probate is the process of proving a will to the court. So we ascertain all of the assets and liabilities that charge those assets of a deceased at the time of their passing. We take the last will and we present it to the court and say, I'm the executor named in this will. I need to have the legal authority to take these assets into my name in trust as the trustee so that I can deal with them in accordance with the provisions of the will. So only the assets listed in that probate will be assets that the executor will be able to take authority over. So sometimes an executor will come to us and say, I didn't know about this property because I didn't do a full and complete search of the registry. I just knew they owned one property. I didn't think they might have owned another property. So they'll have a probate, but then they'll have to do a supplemental application before they can sell the other piece of land because it's only what the court granted probate on that the executor gains control of.
So you're basically seeing these assets through to their final destination,
Exactly.
right? And so that could be family members and friends, gifts, what have you.
Absolutely.
So they're overseeing that. The executor is
Right.
probate. So that's the official end of that person's life's work and assets, right? Kind of.
Kind of. I often think of the official end as the final clearance certificate from CRA. When the government removes you from the tax rolls as a taxpayer, it's over.
Right.
Yeah. But
And are they first on the list, Leah, to get paid?
Yes,
Typically? Yes.
Pretty much, yeah. And I mean, I definitely agree that the file is not done until Canada Revenue Agency says it's done.
That's the old saying. There's two things in life that are guaranteed.
Death and taxes.
Till the very end.
till the very end.
All right. So so the executor is in charge. They're basically your legal representative after you've passed to make
Yes.
sure everything is dispersed
Right.
as you set out in your will. So you've mentioned things that might be missing. So how do you find out what is should be included in probate? Maybe they're not listed in the will, but you say, wait a second, I think they have a condo timeshare in Whistler.
Right.
So what do? How do you search that out?
Well, we're hoping that the executor either knew the individual well and personally or did a thorough interview with the person before agreeing to be the executor when that person asked them to be. But I'll often ask executors to monitor the mail. So we'll change the mailing address and we'll send it to the executor. Anything that comes in the mail should come within a fairly reasonable period of time. I mean, certainly people who are passing in the later months of the year, they're going to start getting their T4s, T5s, all of those T-slips from organizations in the early part of the next year. So that's really good information about assets that are generating income. But with respect to land, we can do a name search with the Land Title Office. And
Is it good to get in touch with their regular accountant, say?
Absolutely. So anything that is in the desk drawer at home, we want to follow up. And sometimes people say, this looks like the last time you did anything with it was 2 years ago. That's not really that long in the grand scheme of our financial lives. So I would take a look through the entire desk drawer, continue looking at the mail, try to look through the mail for the last several months. If you find any email passwords, if you find any other system passwords, I mean, we see a lot of assets like Q-Trade right now, and people have assets at places like ING with no storefront, right? So we're
Right.
looking at those electronic assets and trying to find them.
And now banks and institutions are trying to get away from paper paper. They don't want to pay for the postage, so everything is online. And as you said, if you don't know the password to their banking, how do you get access to Scotiabank or TD Bank?
Well, even if you knew the passwords, you wouldn't necessarily have access. So once a person has passed away, the banks will close the accounts to further investigation online. So you'll have to go in, you'll have to be writing letters, you'll have to be demonstrating that you have the legal authority, so a certified true copy of the will, a certified true copy of the death certificate. They'll want to know they're dealing with the right person and that you're not just making it up that this person has passed away.
Can you help with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And give them something that says this person is representing, or do you do it?
We often are asked to do it. So we have, a good relationship with most of these institutions. They understand that once we're writing to them on legal letterhead, we've been properly retained, we've investigated properly. We don't write simply saying, somebody told us that this fellow passed away. We're very careful about the documents. We always include the documents in our first mailing that we know the institutions require in order to deal with us. And that'll be an authorization letter. It'll be, like I said, a certified copy of the documents authorizing our client, as well as a certified true copy of the death certificate confirming that there is need for the executor to step forward.
Okay, so let's sort of back this up a little bit, Leah. When you don't have somebody in place that's an executor and something happens, person passes away, so how do you go into that step of probate without having an executor?
So you're required to make an application to court to be appointed as a representative, but not as an executor, to say somebody needs to handle this estate, so it should be me. It's not necessarily cheap. There's legal fees that are associated with that. And then the court basically gives you that stamp of approval to say, okay, you can move forward and be the representative of the estate. And that's called an administrator.
Mm-hmm. And how long does probate typically last? I think in a previous show you had mentioned it can be quite lengthy, right? Mm-hmm. But you try to get things done in a timely fashion. Does the law, is bringing a firm on board to help you with probate help keep you on track? Because, people procrastinate. They're busy. Oh, I've got to get around to that. But another week goes by and another week goes by. And does having somebody like yourself say, well, we need this, does it help move it along?
I think for some clients, it certainly does. It certainly helps clients who have not done it, 10 times before. I mean, clients who have done it once before might have done it under prior legislation. Clients who have done it once or twice before, they're encountering different circumstances each time. So it can be helpful to have somebody who has done this all day, every day for the past 15 years, the way we have. But when I look at that, the difference at the registry is simply that we know what will be bounced when the registry staff look at the application. So our goal is to perfect the application before it goes to the registry. When a layperson drafts the documents, they're not entirely certain what the registry is going to find concerning in that application. Mm-hmm. So we don't get preferential treatment at the registry. There's nothing that a lawyer can do to say that they can speed something up, that they can do it better.
Just doing it right the first time.
We do it right the first time. We also monitor the registries. Are we looking at a registry that is experiencing a gradual slowdown in services? Is there another registry we could select to use? Is there another registry of opportunity where the assets were housed somewhere else in the province and we might have to go to court to speak to an application on a certain matter? Maybe we want it to be in that other registry. So there's a number of decisions that go into preparing and filing the application on a lawyer's desk that a layperson might not think of, and they will typically enhance the speed.
Well, I wouldn't even know where to start. I mean, I'm sure most people who, if they're an executor and they find out, and maybe they weren't even aware, and they take that job on, like, what would you even do?
Yeah, well, a lot of times executors start doling things out as they see them in the will, and that's not the appropriate thing to do either. Because
why is that? What can happen?
Well, somebody might make a claim against those assets. So there's certainly within our legislation, the Wills Estate Succession Act, that came into force in 2014, March 2014. The provisions of the old Wills Estate Succession Act, there I'm repeating myself, the provisions of the old Wills Variation Act are no longer in force under the Wills Variation Act, but they are in force as a division of WESA. And so we have to wait 210 days from the date of the grant of probate to distribute, because the people who are children or spouses of a deceased have the entitlement to make a claim against the estate if they feel the provisions of the will weren't fair, just, and adequate to them.
So that's 2/3 of a year.
Mm-hmm.
Can whiz by, right?
From the date of probate. Not from the date of death, too. So when people come to us and they say, okay, I've got 90% of everything in the will distributed already, that might pose a problem.
And what do you see, Leah, on your end when there's issues like that?
So I've seen, executors are humans. They make mistakes. So sometimes I've seen someone misread a term in a will. So they mistakenly made payments, regular payments, to a person that was not supposed to be receiving those payments.
And is there any examples you can have of terminology that a layperson would read differently than a lawyer?
The example in this case was living expenses.
Right.
So, there was a definition, but the explanation that the executor gave was that they didn't understand that was included. They thought they were excluded. I mean, there's lots of different confusing terminology. This will was not drafted by a lawyer, so it wasn't necessarily clear. Mm-hmm. And so that executor made that error and made a bunch of payments over 5-year time period. So it was a considerable sum of money that they paid out incorrectly, and that executor is personally responsible for those payments. If they cannot collect them from the person that they paid, they're on the hook for that.
Wow, that's a big responsibility. When we take a break, we're going to get into some complexities around wills and estates, bank accounts, joint assets, joint ownership, capital gains taxes, and more on The Law Show on CL 650.
There's more of the show still ahead. This is The Law Show on CL 650.